In this video, I want to explain how you can pick an investment area in 60 minutes or less. And the reason I'm doing this is a lot of people who want to invest in property, one of the big things that stops them moving forward is they just don't know where should they invest. So that's what we're going to cover in this video and show you how you can very quickly find a great area for you to control and buy property and make really good cash flow. My name's Simon Zucchi. I'm the founder of the Property Investors Network, which is the largest network in the UK and the original network for property investors. I'm the author of Property Magic and also the founder of Crowd Property, which has lent £450 million to UK property developers. So I've been teaching people like you for 22 years how to become successful investors. And this is one of the things that could stop you moving forward. And the reason is this. Often people live in an area, it might be quite nice, quite expensive. They think, how on earth can I afford to buy properties here? It doesn't really stack up, and so they struggle. And my recommendation is that probably wherever you live, there will be a way of investing in the area. You just might need to tweak and change the strategy slightly. And I'm going to talk about what might be some good strategies to use later in this video. Alternatively, you can invest remotely. You don't have to invest where you live, and it might be 2 or 3 hours away from where you live, as long as you have a good team on the ground who can help you do the things that you need to do. Obviously, you need people who can view properties for you. You need to make sure you have people who can do work on properties, whether it's renovation or even just handyman, keeping things in a good standard so you can easily rent them out to tenants. And you need letting agents in the area who can know exactly what they're doing and get the right kind of tenants into your property. Many of my students invest remotely. We have people from overseas who invest in the UK, and they do that because they've got a good team of people on the ground. And we'll talk about if you're going to invest in an area that's not where you live, how do you find that area in the first place? But what I'm going to first talk about is investing where you live, because you're going to know the good areas, the not so good areas, and you have a slightly better understanding of what's happening in the market. Where you live, how do you find an area that's going to work for you? Well, it doesn't have to be exactly where. It doesn't have to be on your street. It doesn't have to be the next street. I think probably within 45 minutes drive of where you live, it's a very manageable area in which to invest, and there will be an area that might stack up slightly better than exactly where you live. What do I mean by that? Well, when we buy an investment property, we're going to rent out. The idea is we only buy something that's going to give us positive cash flow. And also we want something that's going to give us a good return on investment. We look at how much does this property make us each year, the annual profit, divided by the initial investment put in to acquire that property in the first place. And we multiply that by 100 to give us a percentage. And that gives us our ROI, return on investment. The higher the return on investment, the better the property deal. Now, if you're doing normal single let properties, buy to let, where you're renting to a family or to a couple or maybe to an individual, around the UK, 5 to 7% is a typical ROI. If you're in London or down south, it might be 2 or 3%. If you're up north, there might be some place where you might just get a double-digit ROI from a single let property. The problem is single let properties don't stack up so well because the interest rates are relatively high compared to the were for the last decade, where the Bank of England base rate was only 0.5%. It was much better to have buy-to-lets then. Buy-to-lets often don't make a lot of money, and particularly because we as landlords and investors are taxed differently from other businesses, thanks to Section 21, which came into force in April 2017 from the then Conservative government, which was a change in the way that we are taxed as property investors. Prior to that, most people would buy property in their own name, and particularly if someone became an accidental landlord because maybe they had a property and they moved for work or got into a new relationship and they couldn't sell this property, they decided to rent it, it's probably going to be in their own name. That's why many people had property in their own name. Even if you're buying properties, it was tax advantageous to buy it in your own personal name. However, with Section 24, that's no longer the case, and most people are buying in a property company, because if you have property in a company at the moment, that is not affected by Section 24. So if you've got single lets in your own name, probably doesn't really work. So some better strategies to use would be either houses of multiple occupation. We have one house, we rent out individual rooms to people who are students or young professionals or working people, or serviced accommodation, which is a shorter term rental. You're not going to be full all the time. You normally aim for about 70% occupancy, but you're renting to holidaymakers, tourists, contractors. It's not a permanent home for someone. They live elsewhere. They're just using it for a period of time when they're working or visiting that particular area. It can be very profitable. The income's up and down a little bit compared to an HMO, which is more stable, but both HMOs and serviced accommodation can produce really good cash flow, making you £1,000 profit per month. So within 45 minutes of drive of where you live, there will be an area where there's good, strong demand for that type of accommodation, and the numbers work really, really well. So let's talk a little bit about demand now in this part of the video. So when it comes to where you're going to invest, golden rule number 2 from my 5 golden rules in my book, Property Magic, is you need to buy in an area with strong rental demand. So if the current tenants renting there decide to move on, you can quickly and easily find other people who'll move in at a good market rent. Now, generally in the UK, we have pretty strong demand at the moment because there's not enough accommodation. The government have said we need 300,000 new homes every year, and we're just not building anywhere near that. And with an increasing population, the problem is only getting worse. So if you have a good property in a good area, you should easily be able to find tenants prepared to pay a fair market rent for that property. So demand is really, really important. How do you check demand? Well, if you are doing HMOs, for example, you can go on to spareroom.co.uk, which is a website that many landlords use to advertise their properties, and also tenants use to advertise the fact they're looking for a property. You can check the difference between the supply and demand of properties in that area. If there are lots and lots of properties that seem to be available for rent and people are reducing their rent because there's an oversupply, well then maybe that's not such a good area. You also have to check the quality of the competition. You see, a lot of HMOs, for example, they're not very good. They're very standard. They've got magnolia walls. They've got boring furniture. Whereas when we teach people to do HMOs, we talk about doing a high-end co-living. They look better, they're more functional, and you attract a better class of tenant who's prepared to pay more rent, and generally they stay in the property for longer, so you have less void periods. So when you do HMOs, make sure you're doing high-end HMOs, and if you have a good HMO, better than the average in the area, you should be able to rent it. I love HMOs because they provide a very affordable accommodation for people who can't afford to live on their own in a studio or an apartment, or maybe they don't want to live on their own. So I think HMOs is a great recession-proof strategy. The other thing is serviced accommodation. And again, there's a website you can use called AirDNA, where you can check what's the average occupancy rate, how much a room's going for, and you can do your numbers to work out, does it stack up as a deal? Now for serviced accommodation, you want to make sure that if the property is only full half of the time with 50% occupancy, it breaks even and makes a bit of money. Ideally, we're aiming for 70% occupancy, and that should tell you how much profit it's going to make. You've got to make sure that there's demand in the area for the type of tenant you're going to rent to. If you're renting to tourists, well, many tourist locations, especially in the UK, they're seasonal. You might get very high rents in the summer or half terms or holidays, but then other times you're going to get a low rent. And you've got to average that out to make sure it makes money for you. If you're working with contractors, people who are working away from home, they might want to stay there from Monday through to Thursday or Friday, then you might have a better, a non-seasonal affected demand throughout the year. So you've got to think about the type of person who I'm trying to attract. Is this property, is this location going to be suitable for that type of tenant to live in the property? A very important consideration when buying any investment property is obviously the location. What do we mean by that? Well, we mean location in terms of what are the facilities and amenities? Are there supermarkets? Are there gymnasiums? Are there bars and restaurants close? What about the transport links? And don't assume everybody drives. You need to think about public transport links, buses, trains, metro, etc. So is it going to be a convenient location for the tenants you're trying to attract to that particular property to live in that particular area? So picking an area that's got a good, strong rental demand is very, very important. One thing you can do, which is a general principle, if you can buy properties in an area where the population is growing at a faster rate than other areas, you should have an increased demand for rental accommodation, and you should see the values of those properties going up as well. So try and find areas where the population is growing and growing faster than others, and don't buy in areas where the population is declining, because that's going the wrong way. So you want areas that are stimulating the growth. Maybe that's because they're building new hospitals or extending universities, or they're building business parks and there are incentives for businesses to come into the area. Those people who work for those businesses need somewhere to live. So try and find areas where the population is growing. You're going to have a better long-term investment by doing that. And my final tip on this video about picking an area that you want to invest in is you've got to think about the type of property stock you're looking to buy. Now, obviously, it depends on what your tenants are looking for. If you're renting to students, they quite like sharing houses together. If you're trying to do service accommodation, it could be anything from studio flats to big houses where people working together can live together as well. It really depends on who your client is. However, I will make one suggestion about property type. My preference is not buying brand new property, whether that's houses or apartments, because if you buy brand new property, even if you're buying at an alleged discount, you are pretty much paying premium prices for that property. And actually, there's very little you can do to add value, and you're going to have to sit back and wait for the long-term capital appreciation. In my view, it's much better buying an older property which needs a bit of work doing to it, and then you can then add value to that property, and you're probably going to have better capital appreciation. If I had to pick houses or apartments, I would always pick houses. I do have a number of apartments in my portfolio, but the houses have always performed better in terms of capital growth. Now, in places like London, probably most properties are apartments, but other cities around the country, if you have a choice, I'd much rather buy houses rather than apartments. Tenants like living in apartments, absolutely, but you probably won't get the same capital growth as you will the house. And also there's leases and service charges to pay when you have an apartment that can eat into your profit. And sometimes the management company looking after the building may not do a great job as well. When you've got a house and you're responsible for it, you can have a much bigger impact on how you look after it and have better capital growth. So my general tip is buy houses rather than apartments, okay? But apartments can be good deals sometimes. And also, I like to buy property where I can add value rather than having the one that's completely ready to go, because there's no way I can add value to that. I've got to sit and wait a longer time to get the capital appreciation. So I hope that helps you in thinking about where you want to buy and what you actually want to buy. If you've liked this video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to make sure you're notified anytime a new video comes out. And come and comment below. What are your biggest challenges when investing in property? And maybe I'll do some specific videos to help you understand how you can overcome those challenges. Today was all about helping you find the right area in which to invest in. And just to summarize, probably where you live within 45 minutes, there's going to be an area that works really well. But you can invest remotely, maybe several hours away from where you live, as long as you have a good team on the ground to help you with that. Now, if you are investing remotely, one of the best things you can do is plug into our Property Investors Network. We have 45 meetings around the country and a couple in the Netherlands. And if you're investing in, say, Manchester or Sheffield or Leeds, you can go and visit the actual local Property Investor Network meeting, stand up, say you're out of it, say you're looking for people to help, and there'll be lots of people there who can help you. Some of them might want paying, some might help you for free, people you can joint venture with, but you need people on the ground who know what they're doing if you're investing remotely, and that's a great way to start finding those people, and also ask for recommendations. The people at that local meeting, who are they using as letting agents, builders, solicitors, people you need in your power team? Get those local contacts from your local meeting. If you've been to a PIN meeting, you know how good they are. If you've not been, oh my God, you are missing out. And I'd love to invite you to come to your very first Property Investor Network meeting as my guest. All you have to do is go to pinmeeting.co.uk. We're going to put a link in the description below this video, pinmeeting.co.uk. Select the meeting you want around the country. Make sure you can make the date and time. They're normally on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the evening, so after work. And it's an opportunity to come and connect and meet other local investors in the area in which you're investing, to get updated with all the changes, what's happening in the market, and to be inspired by other people who are doing what you want to achieve as well. All you have to do, and I'll put details in the description below, go to pinmeeting.co.uk, find your local or the area which you want to invest in, check you can do the date and time. When you scroll down to the bottom of the page to pay for your £25 to attend the meeting, click where it says pay with a voucher code, fill in your details and use the code YouTube. If you put in the code YouTube, it will bypass the payment page. You can come to your very first PIN meeting for free as a guest just to check it out and see if it's right for you. I know you're going to gain massive value. I'd highly recommend you do that. And maybe I look forward to seeing you at one of our local meetings at some time in the future. So, as ever, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. Enjoy the next video. See you very soon.